Genesis 25, an Exegetical and Biblical-Theological Commentary. Genesis 25 represents a critical transition within the progressive unfolding of the divine promise plan. It chronicles the transfer of the covenantal mantle from Abraham to Isaac and immediately introduces the subsequent generational crisis through Jacob and Esau. Within the broader biblical worldview, the success of the covenant rests entirely in the hands of the Almighty, who providentially orchestrates life situations to establish and strengthen the faith of His chosen people. The chapter highlights the persistent obstacles to the promise, namely human mortality and barrenness, and demonstrates that the advancement of God's redemptive purpose relies not on natural human strength or cultural norms of primogeniture, but entirely upon God's sovereign grace and miraculous intervention. By preserving the chosen seed through Isaac and then Jacob, Yahweh ensures that the concrete historical promises made to ethnic Israel remain intact, setting the stage for the cosmic blessing of all nations. Moving into the exegesis of Genesis 25. First, the death of Abraham and the preservation of the line, verses 1 through 18. The chapter opens with the concluding days of Abraham, his subsequent marriage to Keturah, and the distribution of his estate. While Abraham gives gifts to his other sons and sends them away to the east, he distinctly gives all that he has to Isaac, securing the exclusive continuity of the covenantal line. The genealogical record of Ishmael, verses 12 through 18, fulfills God's previous promise to make him a great nation, yet firmly distinguishes Ishmael's line from the chosen seed of the promise plan. Next, the barrenness of Rebekah and the sovereign election, verses 19 through 26. The narrative quickly introduces a crisis identical to that of the previous generation. Rebekah is barren. However, Isaac demonstrates profound spiritual growth compared to the preceding generation. He breaks the pattern of relying on human contrivance, as seen with Hagar, and instead rests in knowing that God is the one to consult in difficulty. Isaac seeks Yahweh first, walking in His ways and trusting His covenantal promises. God answers Isaac's prayer, yet the pregnancy is fraught with internal conflict, prompting Rebekah to inquire of the Lord. The divine oracle she receives reveals that two nations are in her womb and establishes a key motif: the older shall serve the younger. This reversal of ancient Near Eastern cultural norms serves to remind the reader that the promised seed will come via God's sovereign and miraculous choice, rather than natural human expectation. At birth, the physical characteristics of the twins prefigure their destinies. Esau emerges as a hairy red man, while Jacob is born grabbing his brother's heel, reflecting their names and the lifelong struggle that will ensue between them. Now the despising of the birthright, verses 27 through 34. The boys mature into starkly different individuals, highlighting a contrast in character and values. Esau is depicted as an outdoorsman, a hunter, and a manly man, whereas Jacob is portrayed as more contemplative, dwelling by the tents and cooking food. The crisis peaks when a famished Esau returns from the field and impulsively sells his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of red stew. This transaction is not merely a transfer of material wealth, but signifies a profound disregard for the spiritual inheritance and the promises attached to the Abrahamic Covenant. Esau's willingness to trade his covenantal future for immediate physical gratification highlights a fundamental lack of the fear of God. In the New Testament appropriations, the New Testament authors repeatedly draw upon the historical events of Genesis 25 to articulate profound truths concerning election, grace, and covenant fidelity. In Romans 9, verses 10 through 13, the Apostle Paul explicitly draws upon the prenatal oracle given to Rebekah, "The older will serve the younger," to demonstrate that God's electing purpose is not based on human works, merit, or natural descent, but solely on the sovereign call of God who orchestrates the promise plan. In Hebrews 12, verse 16, the writer of Hebrews uses Esau as a cautionary typology, describing him as a profane or godless person for selling his birthright for a single meal. This warns the New Covenant community against despising their spiritual inheritance for the sake of temporary worldly gratification. Finally, the theological synthesis. Genesis 25 powerfully demonstrates that the promise plan of God is sustained exclusively by divine grace, subverting human expectations and cultural institutions. The barrenness of the matriarchs and the deliberate selection of the younger son over the firstborn systematically dismantle the illusion of human order and self-sufficiency, revealing that the promised seed is secured only through miraculous provision. These physical and historical realities, Isaac's intercessory prayer, the struggle in the womb, and the transfer of the birthright, are not merely ancient family dramas. They form the indispensable concrete matrix through which the overarching redemptive narrative is realized. Within Kaiser's promise plan framework, God's fidelity to ethnic Israel through the specific line of Jacob guarantees that his ultimate cosmic intentions to bless the nations through the Messiah are grounded in unshakable historical reality.